The history of synthesizers. Before I go ahead with this video, I must explain that I fell off my scooter in Spain and I've hurt myself pretty badly. The synthesizer, or synth, is an electronic instrument that generates audio signals. These signals are shaped into sounds using subtractive, additive or frequency modulation FM synthesis. These synths then often have filters that cut or boost frequencies, envelopes that control the stop and start of the sound, and an LFO which controls modulation of either the pitch or the tone. They're controlled by keyboards, sequencers or external controllers like MIDI. The origins of the electronic sound. Synthesis started in the 19th century when Elisha Gray realised that electromagnetic circuits could generate and control sound. In 1901, Thaddeus Cahill invented the Telharmonium. It was a 7-ton monster. It generated sounds and it sent them down telephone lines. This was before speakers and amps had been invented. You couldn't really hear the thing in the room. They would have a big horn that would amplify the sound. But people would literally dial in and listen to the guy playing the instrument. Absolute weird stuff. It had 88 cogs that were enormous and they spun around in front of a magnet which had copper wire on it. This generated the sound. So 88 cogs made an 88-note polyphonic instrument, and then a further 88 cogs would make the sound more harmonic, and this was essentially additive synthesis. We'll dive deeper into that in another video. This was a crude system, but it planted the seed. Electricity can make music. In the 20th century, we had powered vacuum tubes, and then this introduced the Hammond organ and the eerie Ondes Martenot. By the 1950s, the first synth-like instruments emerged. The RCA Mark II used hundreds of vacuum tubes and punch cards to produce sound. It was a room-sized monster and hard to use, but it laid the groundwork. You couldn't play it live, but it did have a sequencer. The Moog Revolution. In New York, Robert Moog was born. He was born to an engineer dad and a school teacher mum, a perfect combination. At 19 years old, he invented his company, RCA Moog Co., and he was building Theremins and selling them. In 1963, he met composer Herb Deutsch, and together they envisioned a more practical real-time synthesizer, the Moog Modular system. It used voltage control to shape the sound dynamically, oscillators created rich waveforms, then filters and envelopes sculptured the sound. This was subtractive synthesis in action. Start with a harmonically rich tone and carve it into something usable. The Moog Modular was revolutionary but also massive and expensive. East versus West, Moog and Buchla. On the West Coast, Don Buchla was crafting something very different. He ditched the keyboard entirely, aiming to escape traditional Western scales. His Buchla 100 also used voltage control, but instead of filtering, it focused on wave shaping. Buchla's approach was more abstract, more experimental, turning the synthesizer into a completely new instrument. First synth records. In 1967, Morten Subotnik released Silver Apples of the Moon, composed entirely on the Buchla 100. It was radical, the first commissioned electronic album. Then in '68, Wendy Carlos changed everything with Switched on Bach. Recorded on a Moog Modular, she layered performances one note at a time onto tape. It went platinum, showing that synths weren't just noise machines. They could make music, real music. It got the attention of the Beatles and brought synths to the mainstream audience. The Minimoog Model D. In '69, engineer Bill Hemsath began prototyping a compact version of the Moog Modular. Synth users kept patching their machines in similar ways. Hemsath noticed this, so he hardwired the basic signal, oscillator to filter to amplifier. By 1970, Moog released the Minimoog Model D, a smaller, more affordable synth with a built-in keyboard. No patch cables, just knobs. It was an instant hit and became the blueprint for thousands of synths and soft synths that followed. It's still the benchmark. Now this used 3 oscillators. Luckily we've still got them tuned. Square wave. Meanwhile, in Putney, EMS invented the VCS3. It was a little bit more primitive than the Moog. This quirky machine didn't even have a keyboard at first. Pitching was unstable and you had to manually tune it so the notes made sense to the Western ear. It featured attack and decay controls but no sustain or release, so sculpting the sound wasn't as flexible as the American synths like the Moog or the ARP. However, the EMS had a genius trick up its sleeve. A pin matrix system that let you patch anything to anything. No spaghetti of patch cables. Despite its limitations, the sound quality and creative freedom was undeniable. It became a cult favourite among experimental and art rock bands, which included Pink Floyd, Hawkwind, and artists like Brian Eno and David Bowie. The EMS VCS3 and the Synthi 100 even made it into sound design for Blake 7, Doctor Who, and early sci-fi. Here's a demo of the Synthi AKS, which was brought out in 1972 and had the same inside as the VCS3. Polyphonic Breakthrough. Early synths were monophonic, but artists wanted more, so Dave Smith came along and he invented the polyphonic synth, the Prophet 5. He used microprocessors so that the sounds could be stored. This was a revelation, it had never been done before, and once you record a preset, if you moved a knob, it became live. Smith didn't think he'd beat the big names to it. He brought out a Rev 1, 2 and 3, increasing and getting more reliable, although some people think that the Rev 1s and 2s sounded better than the Rev 3s. ARP and Oberheim followed suit. The OBX to Jupiter 4 entered the scene. Meanwhile, Yamaha had taken a different route. The CS-80 offered rich, expressive analog sound with polyphonic aftertouch and a ribbon controller, but no patch memory. You had to manually set every slider. Its envelopes weren't standard ADSR either. They used initial, attack and decay stages, making precise programming less predictable than the Prophet 5. digital takes over, FM synthesis and digital sampling. In 1983, Yamaha dropped the DX7, introducing the world to FM synthesis. No filters here, just digital sine waves modulating each other to create bell-like metallic tones. It was the sound of the 80s, rubbery bass lines, electric pianos, synth bells, everyone had one. The Yamaha TX816 is 8 DX7s in a box. Next came sampling. The Fairlight CMI and Synclavier were early giants. Huge, expensive, powerful. The Kurzweil K250 finally nailed a realistic piano at an affordable price. Then came the Sonic Mirage, EMU emulator and Akai's S series, including the S900 and legendary S1000.
Load, yes.
Roger Lind's Akai MPC changed music forever. Artists like Pete Rock and John Diller used its chop and flip samples, laying the foundation of modern hip-hop and beat culture. Software and analog revival. In 1997, Propellerhead's rebirth and Sear Systems reality brought synths into the computer. By 1999, Cubase introduced VST plugins and suddenly entire studios lived on your desktop. Software instruments exploded in the 2000s with reason. Now we have Contact, Massive, Omnisphere, Arteria V Collection with emulations of the CS-80, Minimoog, Jupiter Ray and JD100, plus loads of others. But analog wouldn't die. In the 90s and 2000s, vintage synths started gaining value. Moog, Korg and Dave Smith Instruments released new analog gear, smaller, cheaper but still hands-on. Modular came back too thanks to the Euro rack. This wave of innovation paved the way for soft synths as we know today. Impact. At first, synthesizers were seen as experimental or even threatening, but Switched On Bart changed that. Still, classical purists rejected them. Over time though, synths infiltrated every genre: rock, pop, hip-hop, EDM. Today, the synthesizer stands beside the electric guitar as the most transformative musical instrument ever created. According to Analog Days, it's the only innovation that can stand alongside the electric guitar as a great new instrument of the age of electricity. As Fact magazine put it in 2016, the synthesizer is as important and as ubiquitous in modern music today as the human voice. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, give it a like and subscribe. And if you're interested, there's the top 11 most expensive synths and my studio tour videos to check out. Thank you.